In Thailand, there is a belief that when a person dies with something unfinished, the coffin will not remain still. The knocking heard in the night is not a cry for rescue. It is a warning that some spirits never truly leave. And the story you are about to hear began with a coffin shaking in the darkness. Chapter 1. The Night One Should Not Die. In the southern part of Thailand, hidden behind endless rubber plantations and narrow dirt roads, there was a small village called Ban Kok Sa Na. Outsiders rarely came here, and when they did, they were often warned. Some deaths in this village do not end when the heart stops beating. The villagers believed that not every death was allowed to happen at night. Those who died after midnight, especially sudden, unexplained deaths, were said to be caught between paths, unable to leave the human world completely. Somchai was one of them. He was a strong construction worker, known for his laughter and loud footsteps. On the night he died, he had gone alone into the rubber forest to check on a generator. He never came back. At dawn, his body was found lying face up between the trees. There were no wounds, no broken bones, no sign of struggle, yet something about him felt deeply wrong. His eyes were wide open, not frozen in shock, but staring, as if he was still watching something no one else could see. When the villagers tried to close his eyelids, they slowly slid open again. Someone whispered that Somchai's soul had not yet left. Because in Thai belief, when a person dies before their fate is complete, the spirit lingers close to the body, sometimes inside it. They placed his body into a simple wooden coffin before sunset. The carpenter hesitated before hammering the nails, his hands trembling. An old woman standing near the doorway suddenly spoke in a broken, breathless voice. "Don't seal it completely." Everyone turned to look at her. "If you close it too tightly," she continued, her eyes fixed on the coffin, "you might hear him knocking, and he will not stop." A chill passed through the room. No one laughed, no one questioned her words. Because in Ban Kok Sa Na, when elders spoke like that, it meant they had seen something before. As the final nail was driven in, a soft sound echoed inside the coffin. It was faint, almost gentle, but unmistakably real. A single, hollow knock. No one said a word. Outside, the wind moved through the rubber trees, carrying with it a feeling that something had gone terribly wrong, not with Somchai's death, but with the fact that he might not be fully dead at all. Chapter 2. The Coffin That Would Not Stay Still. Night fell heavily over Ban Kok Sa Na. The house where Somchai's body rested was sealed from the outside. Wooden shutters closed, oil lamps left burning low. 2 men were assigned to watch over the coffin until morning, a duty no one volunteered for. Yet no one dared refuse. At first, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The air inside the room felt thick, as if breathing required effort. The lamps flickered without wind. Shadows stretched unnaturally long along the walls, reaching toward the coffin placed at the center of the floor. Then, sometime after midnight, it happened. A soft sound broke the silence. "Crrrk." One of the men froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The other nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the coffin. They told themselves it was wood adjusting to the night air. Old coffins made noise all the time. That was what they wanted to believe. Then the coffin moved. Not much. Just enough. One corner lifted slightly off the ground, no more than a finger's width, before dropping back down with a dull thud. The sound echoed like a heartbeat stopping. Both men stood up at once. "That's impossible," one of them said, his voice shaking. "A body can't move after death." As if answering him, the coffin shuddered again. This time, it was stronger. The wooden box rocked gently, left, then right, as though something inside was adjusting its position. The nails creaked, protesting against pressure from within. Neither man approached it. In Thai belief, when a coffin moves on its own, it means one of 2 things. Either the spirit has not left the body, or something else has entered it. Sweat rolled down their faces despite the cool night. One of them began to chant a prayer under his breath, fingers clutching his amulet so tightly it cut into his skin. Suddenly, thump! The sound came from inside the coffin. A single impact. Heavy. Intentional. Not the random twitch of a corpse. It was followed by silence so deep their ears rang. Minutes passed. No movement. No sound. Just when they thought it was over, the coffin trembled violently, scraping across the floor by several inches. One of the men screamed and ran for the door. The other followed without looking back. By morning, the entire village knew. They found the coffin no longer centered in the room. Deep scratch marks lined the wooden floor beneath it, as if something had tried to crawl its way out. An elderly monk was called to examine the scene. He did not touch the coffin. He only stared at it for a long time before saying quietly, "This coffin does not want to be closed." And no one dared to ask why.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. Knocking from Within. By the third night, no one in Bangkok Sa slept properly. The house that held Somchai's coffin remained locked, yet people swore they could hear sounds coming from inside, soft, hollow noises that traveled through the wooden walls and into their dreams. Dogs refused to go near the place. Even insects seemed to avoid it, leaving the air unnaturally still. Just after midnight, the knocking began again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow taps. Then silence. Those who heard it felt the same thing, a strange pressure in their chest. As if something unseen was pressing against their lungs. The sound did not come from the door, or the walls, or the roof. It came from inside the coffin. A young monk named Fra Inurik was summoned from a nearby temple. He was inexperienced but known for his strong faith. When he arrived, the villagers watched him closely, hoping he would bring answers, or at least calm. The moment he stepped into the room, his expression changed. "There is someone listening," he said softly. No one asked him to explain. Fra Inurik sat cross-legged a few steps away from the coffin and began to chant. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as he moved his prayer beads. The chanting echoed against the wooden walls, filling the space with sacred words meant to guide wandering spirits away. At first, nothing happened. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound responded to his chanting. The monk stopped. Slowly, he raised his hand and placed it gently on the coffin's lid. The knocking came again, this time directly beneath his palm. Fra Inurik pulled his hand back as if burned, his face drained of color. "This is not a restless soul," he whispered. "This is a soul that knows it is trapped." The villagers exchanged frightened looks. In Thai belief, when the dead become aware of their confinement, they do not seek peace, they seek escape. The coffin began to vibrate faintly, like something breathing inside it. The vibrations grew stronger, spreading through the wood, into the floor, and up the walls. Cracks formed around several of the nails. Fra Inurik closed his eyes tightly. "There is more than one presence," he said. "One belongs to Somchai, the other does not." As soon as the words left his mouth, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Heavy, expectant. As if whatever was inside had heard him, and was waiting. Outside, a sudden gust of wind slammed the shutters shut. From inside the coffin, a long scraping sound slowly dragged across the wood, like fingernails searching for a way out. Chapter 4. The name the dead could not answer. By dawn, fear had settled permanently over Bangkok Sa. No one questioned what they had heard the night before. The knocking, the scraping, the monk's pale face, these were not rumors anymore. They were facts the villagers carried in their eyes and trembling hands. According to tradition, a spirit could not leave this world unless it was called by its true name. A name anchored the soul, guiding it toward the next path. Without it, the dead wandered blindly, often clinging to their own bodies. That morning, a troubling realization surfaced. No one knew Somchai's real name. He had arrived in the village years ago to work construction. People called him Somchai because it was convenient, because it sounded right. No documents, no family records, no proof that the name belonged to him. When the elders gathered, the coffin sat silently in the corner, as if listening. "If we don't call him correctly," an old man said, "his spirit won't leave." "And if we call him wrong?" another replied. No one answered. Still, they decided to try. At noon, Incense was lit. Offerings were placed beside the coffin. One by one, the elders called out names. Names they thought might belong to him. Names whispered by memory and guesswork. Nothing happened at first. Then, when a woman softly spoke the name, Somchai, the coffin jerked violently. The lid rattled as if something had slammed against it from inside. Several nails bent upward with a sharp screech. People screamed and backed away. "That is not his name," the monk said quietly, "or it is a name he rejects." The air grew heavy, pressing down on everyone in the room. A deep, muffled sound rose from inside the coffin, not a knock this time, but something closer to a groan, thick and wet, as if a throat full of soil was trying to form words. The monk's voice trembled. When the dead refuse a name, it means something else is answering. A sudden crack split the wood near the coffin's edge. Dark moisture seeped out, trailing slowly across the floor. The villagers understood then. The spirit inside was not asking for release. It was demanding recognition. And worse, it was growing impatient. As the incense burned low, the coffin gave one final, deliberate shake. Not in panic, but in warning.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The wife Who heard her husband's voice. That night, Somchai's wife, Molly, did not stay in the house with the coffin. She could not. From the moment the sun went down, her chest felt tight, as if something invisible was slowly wrapping around her ribs. The elders insisted she sleep at her sister's house across the village, believing distance might protect her. It did not. Molly dreamed of Somchai standing at the foot of her bed. He looked wrong. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his clothes were soaked as if he had been pulled from deep water. His neck hung at an unnatural angle, slightly twisted, and dark fingerprints circled his throat. He did not blink. "Molly," he whispered. His voice was familiar, but hollow, stretched thin, like it was being forced through something narrow. She tried to reach him, but her body would not move. "I'm not finished," Somchai said. "They closed me too soon." As he spoke, the sound of wooden knocking echoed through the dream, slow, heavy blows that seemed to come from behind his chest. When Molly screamed, she woke up choking on air. At the same moment, back in the house where the coffin rested, a loud bang shook the walls. Villagers rushed inside to find the coffin had shifted nearly a meter from where it had been placed. The floor beneath it was scratched and splintered, as if something had dragged it across the room from below. Inside the coffin, Somchai's body had changed. His fingers were bent backward, nails cracked and bloodied. The muscles in his arms were stiff, frozen in the shape of someone pushing upward with desperate strength. And his mouth, it was open, not slack, but stretched wide, as if caught mid-scream. The monk who examined him stepped back, shaking his head. "He is still trying to breathe," he said, "and something else is breathing with him." That same night, Molly heard her husband's voice again, this time while she was awake. It came from outside her sister's window. Soft, familiar. Molly opened the door. She did not move, because the voice was coming from the wrong direction. From the ground below the house. From somewhere that sounded like it was calling through layers of wood and soil. Like a man trapped inside a coffin, learning how to speak to the living. Chapter 6. The neighbor Who saw him. The first person to see Somchai after his death was not his wife. It was Uncle Prasit, the old man who lived in the house closest to the forest path. Prasit had lived in Bangkok Sa Na long enough to know when something was wrong. On the night after Molly's dream, he woke suddenly with the feeling that someone was standing at the foot of his bed. He did not open his eyes. That was his first mistake. Because he heard breathing. Slow, wet, strained. It sounded like lungs struggling against dirt. When Prasit finally forced himself to look, he saw a figure standing in the corner of the room, half hidden in shadow. It was Somchai. Or something wearing Somchai's shape. His skin was swollen and discolored, veins dark beneath the surface. His neck leaned slightly to one side, as if it no longer remembered how to hold a head upright. His feet were coated in mud, leaving damp footprints on the wooden floor. "You saw me," Somchai said quietly. Prasit's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I heard you knocking, Somchai continued. Why didn't you answer? As he stepped forward, Prasit noticed the smell, earthy and metallic, like freshly dug soil mixed with blood. The old man reached for the Buddha amulet around his neck. Somchai's eyes followed the movement. That won't help, he said. I'm still inside. Before Prasit could ask what that meant, Somchai faded backward into the darkness, dissolving like smoke pulled into the cracks of the room. The next morning, Prasit was found sitting upright in his bed. Dead. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. His fingers were curled into fists so tight that his nails had torn into his palms. Beneath his bed, the wooden floor was scratched deep, as if something had tried to dig its way up from below. When the villagers returned to the coffin, they found new marks on the inside of the lid, long grooves carved by fingernails. The monk spoke softly. The dead is learning how to leave without opening the coffin. And somewhere in the village, beneath the ground and inside the walls, something continued to knock. Patiently.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. What the Dead Come Back For. After Prasit's death, Bangkok Sa Na stopped pretending this was an accident. The villagers no longer asked if Somchai would return. They asked why. In Thai folklore, the dead do not rise without purpose. A restless spirit always wants something: justice, remembrance, revenge, or release. But when a corpse itself begins to move, when a coffin refuses to stay closed, it means the purpose is no longer simple. It means the dead is being used. The senior monk gathered the villagers beneath the temple roof and spoke in a voice heavy with caution. When a person dies while possessed, he said, their body becomes a shelter. If buried too soon, the thing inside has nowhere to go. And what does it want? Someone asked. The monk hesitated to finish what it started. That night, the coffin shook again. Not violently. Deliberately. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. The rhythm was slow, thoughtful, almost polite. This was no longer panic. It was communication. Inside the coffin, Somchai's body had begun to change in subtle ways. His jaw no longer hung open. It was clenched tight, teeth grinding softly against one another. His chest, though lifeless, bore faint impressions, as if something inside was pressing outward, testing the limits of bone and skin. Molly was brought back to the house despite her protests. The dead comes back for blood or for love, the monk told her. If it is love, it will speak through you. When Molly stood near the coffin, the knocking stopped. The silence stretched painfully long. Then a voice, thin, muffled, and distorted, slipped through the wood. Molly, listen. She collapsed to her knees. He's not alone, she sobbed. Something followed him home from the forest. At that moment, deep scratch marks appeared along the coffin's inner rim, forming symbols no one recognized, curved lines, repeated patterns, shapes resembling old forest charms used to bind spirits. The monk's face turned ashen. This is no longer about Somchai, he said. This is about what he disturbed. Outside the temple, the ground trembled lightly, as if something buried was shifting position. And far beneath the village, inside wood, soil, and bone, something had decided it was time to come out. Chapter 8. The coffin that should never be opened. The decision to open the coffin was made before anyone dared to say it aloud. In Bangkok Sa Na, there were rules older than the village itself. One of them was clear and absolute. A moving coffin must never be opened. Not to confirm death, not to ease fear, not even to pray. Because whatever causes a coffin to move is not something meant to be seen. But fear had already eaten through reason. The monk warned them one last time. If you open it, he said, you must be prepared to accept what comes with it. They did it anyway. At sunset, 4 men approached the coffin. Their hands shook as they pulled out the bent nails one by one. Each metallic scrape sounded unnaturally loud, echoing like a scream trapped inside wood. The moment the final nail came loose, the coffin lurched upward. The lid slammed open with explosive force, knocking 2 men backward onto the floor. Inside lay Somchai. And yet, it was wrong to call it lying. His body had twisted completely around. His head faced the foot of the coffin, neck bent at an impossible angle, as if something had turned him from the inside. His arms were raised above his chest, elbows locked, fingers curled inward, frozen in the exact position of someone pounding desperately against a lid. His fingernails were gone, torn away, broken, embedded deep into the wood above him. Blood had dried in long streaks across the coffin's interior, but there was no smell of decay. Instead, the air carried a sharp, metallic scent, fresh, unsettling, alive. Then his eyes moved. Slowly, deliberately. They rolled toward the people standing over him. A wet, choking sound rose from his throat. One of the men screamed. The monk dropped to his knees, chanting frantically, but the words tangled in his mouth as the corpse's lips began to tremble. He wasn't dead when he was sealed, the monk whispered in horror. He was silenced. At that moment, Somchai's chest rose. Once. Then again. Not breathing, but being pushed outward from within. Something beneath his ribcage shifted violently, distorting his body from the inside. The skin stretched tight, veins bulging dark and thick, forming shapes that pulsed in rhythm with the knocking sound now echoing through the room. Thump, thump, thump. Not from the coffin anymore. From inside Somchai himself. The monk screamed, "Close it!" But before anyone could move, Somchai's mouth opened far wider than humanly possible. And a voice, deep, layered, and not his own, spoke from inside the body. "He does not belong to you anymore." The lamps went out, and in the sudden darkness, something inside the coffin stood up.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The man Who died before he was dead. When the lamps were lit again, Somchai's body was back inside the coffin. Standing. Rigid. Silent. No one could explain how it had returned to that position. No one wanted to. The monk refused to step closer. His voice trembled as he spoke. "This is not resurrection," he said. "This is occupation." The truth came out slowly, dragged into the open by fear and guilt. 2 nights before his death, Somchai had gone into the forest alone. He was not fixing a generator. He was following voices, soft whispers calling his name from deep among the rubber trees. Voices that sounded familiar, comforting, almost loving. In the heart of the forest, he found an old spirit shrine half swallowed by roots and soil. The charms nailed to it were broken, the offerings long rotted away. Somchai touched it. That was enough. The villagers remembered then, long ago. That part of the forest had been sealed off after several workers disappeared. The elders had placed binding charms there to keep something contained. Somchai did not die instantly. He was found hours later, heart barely beating, lungs filled with mud and blood. The thing inside him had already taken hold, wrapping around his organs, silencing his cries. They mistook him for dead and sealed him. Inside the coffin, Somchai woke up. He screamed until his throat tore. He clawed until his nails broke. He begged until his voice failed. And all the while, something inside him listened, learning how fear sounded, learning how pain worked. The monk looked at the coffin with horror. The spirit did not kill him, he said. It let him live long enough. As if responding, the body inside the coffin shuddered. Somchai's mouth opened, but his voice did not come out alone. "You buried me," it said. The words layered over each other, Somchai's voice beneath, crushed and suffocating, and another voice riding on top of it, deep and ancient. "I knocked," it continued. "You heard me, you chose silence." The coffin shook violently, slamming against the walls. Cracks split the wood as dark fluid seeped out, dripping onto the floor like blood diluted with earth. The monk stepped back, tears in his eyes. "What you hear now," he said softly, "is not anger. It is memory. And memories, once awakened, do not stay buried." Chapter 10. The night we tried to interfere. Fear does not always make people run. Sometimes, it makes them believe they can fix what should never have been touched. That night, the elders of Bangkok Sa Na decided to act. They believed that if the spirit had entered Somchai through the forest shrine, Then it could be forced out the same way, by sealing the body completely and cutting off every path between the living and the dead. It was a desperate idea. And desperation never respects tradition. They wrapped the coffin in sacred thread, layer after layer, until the wood disappeared beneath white lines of protection. Old charms were burned, their ashes smeared across the lid in shaking patterns. The monk chanted until his voice cracked, sweat dripping down his temples. For a moment, it worked. The coffin stopped moving. The knocking faded into silence. People dared to breathe again. Then Somchai laughed. The sound came from inside the coffin, low, wet, and wrong, as if laughter were being dragged through soil-filled lungs. "You're sealing the door," the voice said calmly, "but you're still standing inside the room." The coffin slammed upward, snapping the sacred threads like thin hair. The charms peeled away from the wood, curling and burning black as if touched by fire. The floor shook violently, shelves collapsed, lamps fell and shattered, plunging the room into chaos. One of the elders tried to recite a protective prayer. He never finished. The coffin burst open, and Somchai's body collapsed onto the floor, twisted, broken, yet moving with unnatural strength. His limbs bent the wrong way as he dragged himself forward, leaving streaks of dark fluid behind him. His chest heaved violently, something pressing against his ribs from the inside, trying to push its way out. The monk screamed for everyone to leave. Too late. Somchai's head snapped upward, his eyes locked onto the elders. "You wanted to interfere," the voice said. "Now you will participate." The ground beneath the house cracked open with a deafening roar. From below came the sound of wood splintering, old coffins shifting in the soil. Responding to the call. This was no longer about one body. The dead were listening. And they were learning.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Confession That Should Never Be Spoken. After that night, Bangkok Sa Na was no longer a village. It was a place holding its breath. People stopped leaving their homes after sunset. Doors were bolted, windows were sealed, yet no barrier could keep out the sound that began to spread through the village. Soft knocks coming from places where no one stood. Walls. Floors. Beneath beds. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. The monk gathered the elders again, his face drawn with exhaustion and fear. "There is something you haven't told me," he said. "The dead does not punish without reason." Silence answered him. Then, at last, one elder broke. Years ago, before Somchai ever came to the village, a group of men had used the forest shrine for something forbidden. They had trapped a wandering spirit there, binding it to the land to protect the village from misfortune. It worked, crops flourished, accidents became rare. But protection demanded payment. They fed the shrine with offerings meant for the dead. When offerings failed, they used fear. When fear failed, they used silence. Someone always disappeared. Somchai was not the first. He wasn't chosen. The elder sobbed. He just found it. The monk closed his eyes in grief. "A spirit bound by wrongdoing does not forget," he said, "and it does not forgive." That night, the confession spread, whispered from house to house like a disease. And with every truth spoken, the knocking grew louder, closer. Somchai's voice returned, layered beneath the other. "I kept knocking," it said softly. "You kept pretending not to hear." One by one, elders began to fall ill. They dreamed of narrow spaces, of splintering wood, of air running out. Some woke with dirt under their fingernails. Others did not wake at all. In the center of the village, the coffin, now sealed and buried, shook beneath the ground. Not in rage. In recognition. The dead had heard the truth. And truth, once spoken, demands an ending. Chapter 12. The monk Who could not look. Fra Chaya had been a monk for more than 40 years. He had presided over funerals, exorcisms, and deaths that left even hardened villagers shaken. But when he arrived in Bangkok Sa Na, he refused to stand directly in front of the buried coffin. He stood to the side. And he kept his eyes lowered. "I can chant," he said quietly, "but I will not look at what answers." The villagers did not ask why. They had learned that some questions invited attention. The coffin had been reburied at the edge of the old cemetery. Far from houses and paths, the soil above it was cracked, as if something beneath had pressed upward again and again, testing the weight of the earth. As Fra Chaya began his chanting, the ground trembled faintly. The sound that followed was not knocking anymore. It was breathing. Slow, rhythmic, patient. The monk's chanting faltered for just a moment. His fingers tightened around his prayer beads until they bit into his skin. "There are many faces here," he whispered, "but only one body." A villager asked, trembling, what that meant. Fra Chaya did not answer. Because the earth began to move. Not violently, but carefully. As if whatever lay beneath was listening, counting the rhythm of the chants, learning when to respond. The monk suddenly raised his voice, forcing power into every syllable. Sacred words spilled from his mouth, meant to separate flesh from spirit, to cut possession from host. The breathing stopped. Then came laughter. It did not echo through the air. It traveled through the ground, through bone and soil, vibrating in the chest of everyone standing there. Fra Chaya flinched. Against his will, his eyes lifted. He did not look at the coffin. He looked at the space above it. Later, when asked what he saw, he would refuse to answer directly. Only this. There was something standing where nothing should stand, he said, and it was wearing him like a shadow. At that moment, the chanting broke apart. The prayer beads snapped, scattering across the ground. The soil above the coffin caved inward slightly, forming the shape of a human chest rising beneath it. Fra Chaya fell to his knees. "This spirit does not want release," he said hoarsely. "It wants witness." The ground stilled. But in the silence that followed, everyone felt it, the certainty that whatever had been buried was no longer alone. It was being watched. And it was watching back.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The village that began to leave. Bangkok Sa Na did not empty overnight. People left in stages, as if the village itself were slowly exhaling its residents. At first, it was the families with children. They packed before dawn, avoiding the old cemetery, avoiding eye contact with neighbors. They said nothing aloud, but everyone knew the reason. The knocking had followed them into their homes. It came from walls that should have been solid, from floors that should have been still. Some claimed they heard it inside their own chests. Those who stayed told themselves they were stronger, that they had roots here, that leaving would not erase what had already been done. They were wrong. The first family to flee never reached the main road. Their truck was found abandoned near the forest edge. Doors open, engine still warm. Inside the vehicle, deep scratches covered the wooden panels, spiraling inward toward the floor. No bodies were found. After that, departures became frantic. People left offerings at crossroads, tied red strings around their wrists, slept with lights on. Still, the dreams came. Coffins. Narrow spaces. Air running out. One woman woke screaming that she could feel wood pressing against her ribs. Her fingernails were torn and bleeding, and the smell of damp soil clung to her hair. At the cemetery, the ground above Somchai's coffin began to sink. Each morning, the depression was deeper, as if the earth itself were slowly accepting the shape of what lay beneath. No matter how much soil they added, it never stayed level. Molly stood at the edge of the village one evening, watching families disappear down the road. She felt the pull too, the instinct to run, to leave everything behind. But when she turned to go, she heard his voice. Not calling. Begging. "If you leave," it whispered from the ground, "I'll follow." That night, the knocking spread beyond Bangkok Sa Na. Nearby villages reported the same rhythm. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Always at night. Always from places no one stood. The elders finally understood. This was not haunting. It was migration. Whatever had learned to move inside Somchai's coffin was no longer bound to one body, one grave, or one village. It had learned a simpler truth. Where there were people, there were places to knock. And Bangkok Sa Na, half empty and sinking into silence, had become only the beginning. Chapter 14. The Man with the Lamp. He arrived just after midnight. No one saw where he came from, only that a faint, Moving light appeared at the far end of the road leading into Bangkok Sa Na, a slow, steady glow cutting through the darkness like a searching eye. The man carried an old oil lamp. Its flame did not flicker in the wind. Those who watched from behind locked doors said the light seemed to pull shadows toward it, stretching them unnaturally long, bending them away from where they belonged. He walked directly to the old cemetery, straight to the place where the ground had sunk deepest. The man stopped and raised the lamp. The light fell onto the soil and revealed something wrong. Footprints, bare footprints, pressed upward from below, as if someone had tried to stand beneath the earth. The man sighed. "You're late," he said softly, "and you learned too much." The ground answered him. Not with knocking. With movement. The soil swelled and cracked, lifting slightly, like a chest drawing breath. From beneath came a sound halfway between a sigh and a growl. "You opened the box," the man continued. "That was never your right." The lamp's flame brightened, burning white instead of yellow. Symbols appeared briefly in the light, old markings used by forest monks to guide spirits that had forgotten their own death. "I'm not here to punish," the man said. "I'm here to count." The earth trembled violently now. A shape pressed upward beneath the soil, forming the outline of a human back, then a head, then hands clawing blindly. The man did not step back. 1, he whispered. The shape froze. 2. The ground split with a wet, tearing sound. The man raised the lamp higher. "When the coffin moves," he said calmly, "it means the dead is awake." A voice rose from beneath the ground, layered, familiar and foreign at once. "Do you know how many listened?" The man's expression hardened. "That's why I've come," he replied, "to see who answered." The light flared. And for a brief, terrible moment, everyone watching felt the certainty that the lamp was not meant to guide the dead, but to decide which of them would be taken next.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The coffin is still moving. By morning, the man with the lamp was gone. No footprints led away from the cemetery. No ash, no melted oil, no sign he had ever been there. Only the ground remained, collapsed inward, forming a hollow shaped exactly like a coffin. And it was still. For the first time since Somchai's death, Bangkok Sa Na knew silence. The villagers who remained believed it was over. They told themselves the man had sealed the debt, taken what was owed, and closed the door between the living and the dead. They were wrong. Weeks later, when authorities came to officially clear the abandoned village, they found something buried beneath the old cemetery. A coffin. Not Somchai's. This one was newer. Untouched by insects, untouched by rot. And yet, when workers lowered it to examine the wood, they felt it. A faint vibration. Not violent. Not desperate. Measured. 3 knocks echoed from inside. A pause. Then 3 more. The workers dropped their tools and fled. The report filed that day stated only one thing. The coffin was reburied immediately. The site sealed, the land declared unsafe. But no report mentioned the final detail. When the coffin was lowered back into the earth, the knocking stopped, as if it had been waiting to be acknowledged. Years later, in villages far from Bangkok Sa Na, people would sometimes wake at night to the sound of knocking, not on doors, not on walls, but from beneath their floors. Those who listened too closely said the sound was not asking to be let out. It was counting. Because in Thai belief, a coffin does not move on its own. It moves when something inside remembers how to knock, and learns that there will always be someone, somewhere, who hears it. Even now, they say, if you stand alone at night and feel the ground vibrate beneath your feet, do not answer. The coffin is still moving. If one night, you hear knocking coming from beneath your floor, remember this. Do not answer. Do not step closer. And never ask, who's there? Because when a coffin begins to move, whatever is inside already knows you are listening. And it will not stop.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.